The Galactic Council had always believed that humanity was nothing more than a minor species, a race too young and too weak to matter in the grand scale of the galaxy. They were ignored in politics, brushed aside in trade, and barely tolerated in military discussions. When the Y-Wraith Empire declared war on them, the Council did not interfere. Warnings were given, but they were ignored. Humanity was seen as fragile, as something to be conquered and absorbed. No one believed they would fight back, not against the Y-Wraith, whose war fleets had crushed dozens of civilizations before. The attack came swiftly. A major human colony, a thriving world called Ardent Prime, was obliterated in a matter of hours. Billions died, their cries lost in the void of space. The Y-Wraith laughed at their easy victory. The Council watched in silence. But those who had studied history, those who understood the nature of humanity, felt a shiver of unease. They knew what was coming. For the first time in centuries, humanity did not respond with negotiations or desperate pleas for aid. There were no broadcasts, no calls for allies, no ships fleeing to safer space. Instead, a single message was transmitted across the stars, simple and chilling: you were warned. Then, the silence stretched. Days turned into weeks, and nothing happened. The Y-Wraith Empire, growing impatient, pushed forward, expecting to find more human worlds waiting to be conquered. But what they found were ghost planets colonies, stripped of their people, abandoned cities, and empty stations. Humanity had vanished. The warlords of Y-Wraith boasted that humanity had fled like cowards. They believed the war was already over. But in the dark corners of the galaxy, something was moving. Whispers began spreading. A Y-Wraith general was found dead in his chambers, his security systems untouched. A weapons factory exploded from within, though no sabotage was detected. A patrol fleet, fully armed and ready, was discovered drifting in space, its crew missing without a trace. The Y-Wraith started feeling a fear they had never known before. Then, entire fleets turned against each other. Systems shut down without explanation. Wrath soldiers received orders that contradicted their mission objectives, forcing them to fight their own kind. It took weeks for their leaders to realize the truth: humanity had not disappeared. They had gone silent to prepare for something far worse than war. They had infiltrated, studied, and adapted. And now, they were striking from the shadows, not with brute force, but with precision, tearing the Y-Wraith apart from within. Their fleets collapsed, their supply lines shattered. Every message sent to their high command was intercepted and altered. The Y-Wraith were no longer in control. Panic spread through their ranks, and the Galactic Council finally realized that something terrible was happening. When the Y-Wraith Empire begged for help, the Council hesitated. They had watched the genocide of a human colony and done nothing. Now, it seemed that humanity was delivering its response in the most terrifying way possible. Desperate, the Council sent their own fleets to support the Y-Wraith, believing that together they could contain humanity's wrath. But when they arrived in Y-Wraith space, they found nothing but destruction. Human warships, massive and unknown, emerged from the void. These were not the ships the Council had seen before, not the clunky freighters or outdated battleships. No, these were monsters of war, built in secret, hidden from the eyes of the galaxy. They did not send messages. They did not demand surrender. They simply advanced. The Council's strongest fleets, the ones meant to keep peace in the galaxy, were wiped out in mere minutes. Every defensive measure failed. The Y-Wraith, the once mighty conquerors, were left with no options. Their leaders fell silent, their cities darkened. And when the final human fleet entered their home system, there was no resistance. The Y-Wraith surrendered before a single shot was fired. They had learned the truth too late. The last transmission sent by humanity was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Next time, listen. There was no celebration, no demand for reparation. Humanity did not stay to rule over the Y-Wraith. They did not take territory or claim vengeance beyond what had been necessary. They simply destroyed their enemies, erased their threat, and left. And in their silence, the galaxy understood. The warnings had been ignored, and now everyone knew why. No one would ever make the same mistake again. The Varaxi Dominion had always considered themselves untouchable, rulers of the stars, conquerors of countless worlds. They looked at humanity as nothing more than an inconvenience, a minor species struggling to survive in a galaxy ruled by greater powers. Warnings had been whispered across the stars, warnings from smaller species, traders, and observers who had seen glimpses of what humanity was capable of. But the Varaxi, arrogant and overconfident, ignored them all. They believed humanity would be like every other weak race they had crushed before. And so, without provocation, they launched a full-scale assault on human space, burning colonies, slaughtering civilians, and broadcasting their victories to the entire galaxy as a message. Their warlords laughed as human distress signals went unanswered. The Galactic Council did not interfere, believing that humanity was too small, too fragile to be saved. And then, just as suddenly as the war had begun, humanity went silent. At first, the Varaxi celebrated, believing they had won. No human ships appeared to challenge them. No armies were sent to retaliate. The warlords declared victory, claiming that humanity had been wiped out or had fled in fear. Their fleets moved deeper into human territory, expecting to claim even more worlds. But something felt wrong. Human colonies that should have been easy targets were already abandoned. Supply depots were empty. Stations had been stripped of resources. It was as if humanity had known this invasion was coming and had prepared for something far worse than war. Then, the first reports came in strange incidents, isolated but unsettling. A Varaxi battleship went missing near the edge of occupied space. A high-ranking general was found dead in his quarters, despite being under the highest level of security. Entire patrol fleets stopped responding, their last transmissions filled with static and eerie whispers. The Varaxi believed these were just accidents, malfunctions, or internal sabotage. But as the days passed, the incidents increased. More warships vanished, more commanders were assassinated, more supply routes collapsed. The Dominion began to realize the horrifying truth: humanity had not been defeated. They were still here, and they were striking back in ways the Varaxi had never seen before. The first real sign of terror came when an entire Varaxi shipyard, one of the largest in their empire, exploded from within. There had been no attack, no warning. The security footage, recovered from the wreckage, showed nothing. No enemy ships, no infiltrators. And yet, their greatest weapons had been destroyed as if by ghosts. Panic began to spread. Communications were disrupted across multiple systems. Messages were intercepted and altered. Varaxi ships received conflicting orders, leading to disastrous engagements where they fired upon their own fleets. Their once unbreakable war machine was unraveling, and no one knew how. The Dominion's leaders tried to understand the threat, but every investigation led to dead ends. The few survivors of the missing fleets were found drifting in space, their ships intact but their crews gone, as if they had simply vanished. When interrogated, the survivors could only mutter the same haunting phrase, "We are still here." The Dominion's military council ordered a full retreat, desperate to regroup, but it was already too late. The Varaxi homeworld, a planet that had never known war, suddenly went into chaos. Power grids shut down. Defense systems refused to activate. The planetary AI designed to protect their people turned against them, locking their own soldiers out of critical systems. And then the human fleet arrived. They did not come in massive numbers. They did not broadcast demands or threats. They simply appeared, ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, black, silent, deadly. The Dominion's remaining forces attempted to fight back, but their weapons refused to fire. Their targeting systems failed. Their ships drifted helplessly, as if they had been severed from reality itself. The humans did not attack in a traditional sense. They did not bombard cities or slaughter civilians. They did something far worse: they took control. Every system, every network, every vital piece of infrastructure now belonged to them. The Dominion, once the mightiest force in the galaxy, had been defeated without a single direct battle. The Varaxi leadership, reduced to frightened figures hiding in darkened halls, finally sent a desperate plea to the Galactic Council. They begged for intervention, for protection, for salvation from the unseen nightmare that had consumed their empire. But the Council did nothing. They had ignored humanity's warnings before, and now they understood the price of that mistake. No one wanted to stand against them. No one dared risk becoming their next target. The silence stretched across the stars, and when the humans finally spoke, their message was simple: we do not start wars, but we always finish them. And then, just as they had come, they were gone. No occupation, no further demands, no lingering threats. They had erased the Varaxi Dominion as a power in the galaxy, leaving only ruins and whispers behind. And from that day forward, no species ever questioned what humanity was capable of. The Kraith Alliance had always prided itself on being the ultimate power in the galaxy. Ruthless, efficient, and unmatched in warfare, they had crushed countless civilizations under their rule, leaving behind only fear and submission. When they turned their gaze toward humanity, they expected no resistance. The Galactic Council had issued quiet warnings, telling them that humans were not like other species, that provoking them might be a mistake. But the Kraith had heard such warnings before, and had ignored them every time. To them, humanity was just another species to be conquered, another weak civilization that would either bow or be destroyed. And so, without hesitation, the Kraith fleets invaded human territory, burning colonies, enslaving survivors, and broadcasting their victories across the galaxy. Humanity's pleas for peace were met with nothing but laughter. The warlords of the Kraith believed they had already won. But then, the attacks stopped. The Kraith had expected retaliation, perhaps a last, desperate attempt from humanity to fight back. Instead, they were met with silence. No war fleets gathered. No human ships launched counterattacks. No distress calls were sent. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. The Kraith took this as a sign of weakness, but others in the galaxy began to worry. Something didn't feel right. Then, strange things started happening. High-ranking Kraith commanders disappeared without a trace. Entire fleets, stationed in secured systems, were found adrift, their crews gone. Military outposts reported ghost signals, messages intercepted and rewritten, orders altered without explanation. At first, the Kraith believed these were isolated incidents, the work of rogue factions or internal sabotage. But the incidents increased. Factories producing war machines exploded from within. Strategic data was leaked to enemy factions, causing chaos among their own ranks. Soldiers whispered of shadows moving in the darkness, of ships appearing for mere seconds before vanishing without a trace. The Kraith Intelligence Division tried to find the source of these attacks, but they found nothing. There were no enemy fleets, no invading armies, no visible threats. It was as if they were fighting a war against ghosts. And then the messages began. Across every Kraith system, encrypted transmissions flooded their networks. Short, simple, and terrifying, "We are still here." At first, the Kraith dismissed them as psychological warfare, an attempt to spread fear. But the fear was already spreading. Warlords turned against one another, accusing each other of incompetence. Soldiers refused to follow orders, terrified of fighting an enemy they could not see. Planets that had once been strongholds of Kraith power fell into chaos as systems shut down without warning. The Kraith fleet, once the most feared force in the galaxy, was now crumbling from within. They finally realized the horrifying truth: humanity had never planned to fight them in open war. They had chosen a different kind of battle, one that the Kraith had never faced before. A war of silence, of shadows, of precise and devastating strikes that left no trace. The Kraith had believed themselves to be the masters of war, but humanity had changed the rules entirely. In desperation, the Kraith leadership attempted to regroup. They gathered their remaining forces, locked down their homeworld, and prepared for what they believed would be humanity's final assault. But no human fleet came. No armies arrived. Instead, their own ships turned against them. Their war AI, once designed to protect their people, was now rewriting its programming, following new orders that did not come from the Kraith. Weapon systems failed. Defenses collapsed. And in the final moments of their empire, the Kraith leaders finally understood they had already lost. Not through battle, not through invasion, but through a war they had never even realized they were fighting. The last message from humanity echoed across the dying Kraith systems. Let this be the last time we are tested. The galaxy watched in silence. And from that day forward, no one ever dared to provoke humanity again. The Drexian dominion was feared across the galaxy. Their empire had lasted for thousands of years, built on war, conquest, and the complete annihilation of any species that dared to resist. They had crushed civilizations before they could rise, ensuring that no rival power could ever challenge them. When they encountered humanity, they barely considered them a threat. The Galactic Council had warned them, spoken of humanity's unpredictability, their resilience, and their ability to adapt in ways no other species could. But the Drexians had conquered resilient species before. They had broken warriors, crushed rebellions, and burned entire planets to ash. To them, humanity was just another primitive race standing in their way. And so, without hesitation, they attacked. The assault was swift and brutal. Human colonies were bombed into ruin, cities turned to dust, and billions were slaughtered in the opening days of war. The Drexians broadcasted their victories, mocking the weakness of humanity. But then, something strange happened. The humans did not beg for mercy. They did not send diplomats to negotiate peace. Instead, they went silent. First, the Drexians believed humanity had accepted defeat. Their fleets pushed further into human space, expecting to find easy conquests. But the deeper they went, the more uneasy they became. Human settlements were abandoned, yet fully operational. Massive space stations were empty, as if the inhabitants had simply disappeared. It was as if humanity had retreated into the shadows, waiting. Then, the disappearances started. A Drexian battleship, fully armed and operational, vanished without a trace. Its last transmission was nothing but static. A high-ranking warlord was found dead in his chambers, despite being under the highest level of security. Patrol fleets went missing, their ships later discovered drifting in space, their crews gone. The Drexians dismissed these as isolated incidents, but the pattern became undeniable. The attacks were not random. They were strategic, methodical, and precise. Someone was hunting them. Fear began to spread. Drexian officers no longer trusted their own systems, their own security. Communications were compromised, orders rewritten, supply chains disrupted. Ships receiving distress calls arrived only to find empty space, with no sign of the fleets that had sent them. It was as if an unseen enemy was pulling them into a trap. The Drexians tried to counterattack, sending fleets to hunt down their mysterious enemy, but there was no fleet to fight. No bases to bomb. No armies to conquer. The war they had expected had never come. Instead, they were being dismantled from the inside. The Galactic Council, which had once stood aside, now watched with growing unease. They had seen humanity's wars before, but this was different. This was not a war of brute force. This was something else. Something terrifying. The final blow came when the Drexian homeworld itself was compromised. Their capital city, protected by the strongest defenses in the galaxy, suddenly went dark. Their security systems shut down, their weapons refused to fire. Their own warships turned against them, controlled by an enemy they could not see. And then, the humans finally spoke. A single message was transmitted across the stars. You thought we were weak? You thought we would break. But you never saw us coming. And just like that, it was over. The Drexian Dominion, the most feared empire in the galaxy, had fallen. Not in battle, not in war, but to an enemy they had never even seen. The galaxy would never forget. And from that moment on, no one ever made the mistake of underestimating humanity again. The Exelthar Imperium had ruled the stars for centuries. They were an ancient, ruthless empire, known for their cruelty and their hunger for domination. Many species had tried to resist them, but all had been crushed, their civilizations reduced to dust. The Galactic Council had long warned against provoking humanity, but the Exelthar, arrogant and confident in their superiority, ignored these warnings. To them, humanity was nothing more than another insignificant species, another weak civilization to be conquered and enslaved. And so, they struck without mercy. Their fleets tore through human space, annihilating entire colonies, enslaving survivors, and broadcasting their victories across the stars as a warning to all who might oppose them. They expected humanity to beg for mercy, to surrender as so many before them had. But they did not. Instead, they did something far more terrifying. They disappeared. At first, the XL-Thar thought they had won. Human-controlled space became eerily silent. No distress signals, no retaliation, no desperate counterattacks. It was as if humanity had simply accepted defeat. But then, strange things began happening. Selthar warships started vanishing without explanation. Entire fleets, fully armed and operational, went silent. The few that were found were little more than ghost ships, their crews missing, their systems wiped clean of data. High-ranking Exelthar officials were assassinated in their own palaces, their security systems intact, no evidence of an intruder. Supply lines collapsed. Military installations suffered catastrophic failures. The Exelthar, for the first time in their long history, began to feel something they had never known before: fear. Desperate to regain control, the Imperium launched a full-scale investigation. They interrogated prisoners, analyzed wreckage, and searched for any trace of their unseen enemy. But they found nothing. Humanity had not launched a fleet. They had not engaged in open war. They had become something else entirely: an invisible force, striking from the darkness, dismantling the Imperium piece by piece. And then, the galaxy received a message. A single, chilling broadcast transmitted across all frequencies: "You burned our worlds. You slaughtered our people. Now, we will teach you why that was a mistake." Panic spread. The Exelthar tried to fortify their defenses, but their enemies were already inside their borders. Their war machines refused to obey them. Their own ships turned against them. Planetary defense grids shut down without warning. Leaders of the Imperium vanished, one by one, until there was no one left to give orders. And then, in the final moments of their empire, the Exelthar homeworld itself was engulfed in darkness. There was no battle, no invasion, only silence. When the darkness lifted, the Exelthar Imperium was gone. The great empire that had ruled the galaxy for centuries had been erased. No human armies remained, no occupation force, no demands for surrender. Humanity had not conquered them. They had simply ended them. And the final lesson they left behind echoed across the stars, a warning to all who might challenge them: we do not seek war. But if you bring it to us, we will end it in ways you cannot imagine. From that moment on, the galaxy never forgot. No one ever dared to provoke humanity again.